being learned. L'schut Rufa Shel Ma'av, Rachel Simcha Bad Nahid, that should have full recovery. Rufa Shel Ma'av. Amen. So we're going to discuss in the Mishnah now, and this is the last Amud of the Perek, how to deal with the Hana'ah that we will have indirectly from Aseh Asherah. The Avodah Zarah, there was a tree, the Etz Asherah. How do you deal with side effects of Hana'ah? We started actually learning this Mishnah, which is also brought in Psachim. And now we're going to actually do the Mishnah together. Natal mimena etzim, if you took some branches of wood from Asherah, asurim b'hana'ah, that is asur b'hana'ah, because it's part of the Avodah Zarah. Hisik bahen et tanur. If you lit up the fire, the oven with them, then says the Mishnah, Im chadash yutas. If the tanur is the first timer, which we mentioned before, they used to harden the earthenware by putting it into oven. Now, if the thing itself is an oven, you turn it on the first time, and the heat generated from that really cooks and bakes the earthenware and makes it hardened, and therefore, forever and ever afterwards, you're benefiting from that first fire, because that's what made this to a durable tanur. So therefore, says the Mishnah, there's no way around it. You have to break the tanur. You cannot use it, because every time you use it, you're using an effect of Avodah Zarah. Says the Mishnah, Ve'im Yashan, but if the tanur was already used before, it was Yashan, was an old one, then there's no problem. You just can't use the heat generated from that one time that you used Aseh Asherah. So hence, let it just cool down, and then you could lit it again with heter wood, with non-Avodah Zarah wood, and that would be good to go. So says the Mishnah now, Afa boit hapat, if you already baked pat with this, you heat up the tanur, and now you used it for baking some goods, those pat, those breads that you made are going to be asir b'hana'ah, because you used Avodah Zarah, and the benefit of that is inside every loaf of bread that you baked. Now, nit'areva ba'acherot, if now this pat that you baked with Aseh Asherah got mixed with a batch, and some have a girsa even over here, ve'acherot ba'acherot. That means, now let's imagine, let's give it numbers, right? One loaf got mixed with 10 into a bunch, let's say 10 loaves. And then one of that batch got mixed with 10 other ones, right? So the chances of you picking one of the second batch is a safek sfika, what we would call it, is a compiled doubt, a compiled safek, because maybe none of in the second batch, none of the Avodah Zarah didn't even get mixed with it, because the one from the first batch that got mixed with the second batch was not the one from Avodah Zarah. So you don't have any Avodah Zarah bread in the second batch. And even if the one that got mixed was the one from Avodah Zarah, maybe this one that I picked is not the one, right? It's a safek sfika. And this would be a source, according to this would be a source that we don't say, even though that in all of the Torah we say safek sfika is mutar, when it comes to Avodah Zarah, this would be a source that we don't say Avodah Zarah, safek sfika by Avodah Zarah. Rabbeinu Tam in the Tosafot disagrees with this. He says, this girsa, for those who have it, you have to X it out. Because the Gemara in Zvachim is clear that we do say, we don't have a source to suggest that we don't say safek sfika by Avodah Zarah, right? And you'll see that this becomes more relevant later on as well. So Rabbeinu Tam says, no, safek sfika we do say by Avodah Zarah, and that girsa is not a correct girsa. But be that as it may, for sure, in one mixture we say it, that even if that bread got mixed with a whole lot of other breads, 100 other breads, 1,000 other breads, now you have a batch of 1,000 breads. One of them is this bread that you baked with Aseh Asherah. All of them are asur. Says the Mishnah, but there's a way out of it. Kulan asurot ba'ana'ah. Rabbi Eliezer says, well, there's a way out. Yolich hana'ah liyam ha'melach. The benefit that you had from that one bread, you destroy that. You put, let's imagine if it's $5. Well, that's like 2 years ago. Now it's $10, right? You take that and you throw it in Yam HaMelach, and then you're good to go. Now you could sell all of these breads to an Avodah Zarah, right? You can't eat them, maybe because you're benefiting one by one directly. Maybe that's a problem, maybe, but you could benefit from them and sell them even loaf by loaf to the goyim, right? That would be fine. Now, if you were selling all of them in one batch, Rashi holds, and Tosafot agrees as well, that would be mutar anyways. If you're selling all of them as one, package deal, and you're not charging for one, that would be mutar. But we're talking about even one by one, you can sell them out. So that's Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Yolich hana'ah liyam ha'melach. Amrulo, Chachamim told Rabbi Eliezer, no, you can't do that. Because ein pidyon la'avodat kochavim. Avodat kochavim does not have pidyon. You cannot be podeh avodah zarah. You can't redeem an isur of avodah zarah. If it's asur because of avodah zarah, there's no pidyon, there's no redemption for that. Now, there are those who suggest that this Rabbi Eliezer is not only going on the case of the bread, but it's also going on the case of the oven. It says, don't break the oven. You don't need to break the oven. Disagrees with Chachamim. It says, just, Yolich hana'ah liyam ha'melach. And Chachamim, who disagree back, they go on all of them. That you can't redeem the Isur of Avodah. If something became Asur because of Avodah Zarah, there's no fixing it by putting some money in Yam HaMelach. Because the Isur is there, and therefore you can't deal with it that way.
Is this the same Rabbi Eliezer?
Sorry? If this is the same Rabbi Eliezer ber Churkenus, usually Rabbi Eliezer that's mentioned in the Mishnayot it is. So says,
Rabbi, where's this concept of throwing money into the just?
You are not using it. You're telling me it's Asur for me to have hana'ah from it. I'm selling these breads, right? I'm selling these breads to the goyim. So you're telling me that it's asur for me to have hana'ah. So what's every loaf of thing? Like few coins worth. So those few coins I'm throwing into Yam HaMelach. So I have no benefit from this when I sell them to the goy. I never got any payment, any hana'ah from the Avodah Zarah part of it, right? Okay. Whereas if I sell it and I get $10, so then I now benefited from indirectly, but I benefited from the Asherah because I used that as fuel for my bread, and I sold the bread and I got some pocketed some money. But if I put that in garbage, then now I have no benefit from it, says the Gemara. Now says the Mishnah further. Another case. Similar case, but different. If you took and you smoothened a straight branch from Asherah and you use it for weaving, you had the machine that was used, the threads would go around this wood, and that wooden piece you took from Asherah. So when you are using this for weaving, every particle that you make through it is benefiting from this piece of wood, which is the main piece of the machinery that you are threading with, you're using for your process. So even though that the threads that you have, or the begadim that you have woven with it, there's no Avodah Zarah in them, but you use the Avodah Zarah to make them, and hence they are direct product of an etz of Asherah. So says the Mishnah, Natal hemena karkur asur ba'ana'ah. The wood is asur ba'ana'ah, and hence arag boita beged. If you have woven something with it, asur ba'ana'ah. The beged you have made is asur ba'ana'ah as well. Nit'arev ba'achirim. If now this beged that you made got mixed with a bunch of other bigadim, you don't know which one is which, And now the Mishnah has that girsa that Rabbeinu Tam doesn't like. Ve'acherim ba'acherim, and even if one of that mixture got mixed with another, you had this one that was made by Avodah Zarah got mixed with 100 other ones, and one of those 100 got mixed with another 100, a second batch, everything is asur. So that girsa is what Rabbeinu Tam rejects. According to Rabbeinu Tam, you have to X this out. The acherim ba'acherim over here. Right? Kulan asurin ba'ana'a. All of them are asur ba'ana'a. And again, Rabbi Eliezer says, Yoli chana'a liyam hamelach. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, just what's the worth of one beget? Throw that in Yam HaMelach, and then you could sell all of them one by one. That's no problem. And of course, Chachamim told him back. They said, Amru lo en pidyon la'avodat kochavim. You can't do that. Now, of course, the obvious question is, why do you need two cases in the Mishnah? You already told me. Now, who cares about if it's a karkur or if it's a wood that I'm using for baking, right? And that's, of course, the first question of the Gemara. Gemara says, we need both cases. You can't just tell me one and not the other one. And neither of them would be enough by itself. Says the Gemara, why? Because if you would only tell me the burning wood for the fuel of a tanur, then I would have thought, only in this case, Rabbi Eliezer is willing to be mekel, that you could put some money in the garbage and you could use the bread, because this is not really that much of a hana'ah from Avodah Zarah. At the time that your hana'ah took shape, the bread was baking, where is the wood? The wood is burnt completely, destroyed. You have some heat left from the wood. It's such a, indirect hana'ah. The wood itself, the Avodah Zarah itself is burnt. I destroyed it. Whereas, in the case of karkur, that smoothened, beautifully, stained, nice wood, still there, not going anywhere, sitting there. The piece of Avodah Zarah is sitting there. Mishum de be'idna de ka gamra pat. Rabbi Eliezer I would have thought, Rabbi Eliezer is more mekel in the case of pat, because when your pat is completed, kalile isura, the isur of Avodah Zarah is gone already, it's burnt to ashes. Aval karkur de iteh le isura be'ene. But by a case of the woven begadim, the piece of wood is still sitting in the machinery there, be'ene, ema modi l'rabanan. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer also would not be modeh, because that's a direct hana'ah from a good piece of Avodah Zarah over there. Therefore, I would have maybe thought that in other cases like this, Rabbi Eliezer also would agree with Rabbanan that we don't allow you to take some money and trash the money and use the beget, and therefore we needed both of the cases in the Mishnah. And if you would only tell me their machloket in karkur, in the case of the wood in the process of making begadim, that's the only case that Rabbanan are machmir, because the piece is sitting there, the reverse of the same svara. But maybe Rabbanan would agree with Rabbi Eliezer in the case of making bread, because the piece of Avodah Zarah is already burnt up to ashes. Maybe they also would agree with Rabbi Eliezer that you could be mekel to be yoli chana'ah liyam hamelach, aval pat. So you need both of the cases of the Mishnah. Amar Bechiyam, Bereh, the Rabbi Bar Nachmani, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Zeiri. In the name of Zeiri, they said, Halacha ke Rabbi Eliezer. Surprisingly, halacha over here is like Rabbi Eliezer. Ikadamri. The those who say, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Reh, Abba bar Rav Chisda, Hachi Amar Zeiri, Halacha ke Rabbi Eliezer. There's a different chain of command in the name of Zeiri. The halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer. Amar Rabbi Barava said, Lo shanu ela pat. They did not say anything but about pat. This is only an indirect hana'ah, that the heat generated in the oven was from etz of Avodah Zarah, and now you baked your bread, there is some hana'ah in the bread. But yain nesech, which the isur of yain nesech is the yain itself, sitting there, if a barrel of wine of yain nesech got mixed with other barrels of wine, in that case, aval chavit, lo. In that case, you can't be mekel. Even according to Rabbi Eliezer, would not be mekel. So this is Rabbi Barabba, right? This is the Gemara saying that even Rabbi Eliezer, who is mekel, is not going to be willing to be mekel by chavit. But Rav Chisda disagrees with this. Says Rav Chisda, afilu chavit muteret. Even a barrel of wine that got mixed with other barrels, if you take the worth of that chavit and you throw it into trash, then in a way, trash, I mean in a way that's not accessible, right? The Rishonim write, when we say Yam HaMelach is just an example of a place and a situation that nobody can reach it. But if you bury it and you destroy, burn it, same thing. So if you take this Hana'ah and you get rid of it, Muteret, even Chavit is mutar. And the Gemara brings a story that Rav Chisda actually paskin like his shita, Lemaaseh, Hahu Gavra, the Itarev lechavita, the Yain Nesech bechamre. There was a fellow that a barrel of Yain Nesech got mixed with all of his barrels of wine, and now he doesn't know what to do. Comes to Rav Chisda. Atar kabed Rav Chisda, Amar, and he told him, Shkol arba zuzi v'shadi benara, take 4 zuzim, which was the worth of a chavit back then, and throw them in the deep nahar, in the deep river, and no one now could reach them. And it will be matir all of your wine to be sold one by one to the goyim. Now, of course, you can't drink it yourself, right? Because one of them is yain nesach, but you could sell them one by one to the goyim, to the market of goyim, no problem. And as we said before, you could sell all of them together even without this, knocking off the price of one. Fine. The next Mishnah says, how do you nullify an asherah? Imagine you have an asherah. A goy has an asherah. Well, a yid cannot be mebatel in Avodah Zarah v'goy. That we got to say also. But the goy himself, how what's considered that he was mebatel? He nullified his asherah. So says the Mishnah, ketzad mebatela, kirsem v'zired, natal mimena makel o sharbit, afilu ale hareze betela. If he took some piece, cut off a branch, he cut off a thick branch, a small branch, right? He took it, and it's not for the beautifying of the tree itself. He took it for his own. He wanted to make a staff, so he took the saw and cut off a piece and made it for a cane, for a staff, whatever it is. That is mebatel the Avodah Zarah, right?
Even if he didn't have the intention.
He wants to, because he doesn't care about that. If he would care, he would not use it for the thing. So says the Gemara, but if he beautified it by cutting off some branches and weeding it and so on and so forth, that if it's lesorka for the Avodah Zarah's beauty, of course that's not considered betela. That's asur shelo lesorcha muteret. But if he did it not for the sorech Avodah Zarah, then it will be mutar. Says the Gemara, otan shfa'in matehe alehen. What happens with those things that you took off? You beautified the asherah. You took these branches that were extra and ugly off. What's the halacha of those branches that you cut off? Do they become mutar or do they stay asur? So pligi Rav Huna, Rav Chia, again the girsa, whatever girsa it is that you have over here, the right girsa has to be v'chia barav. Chad amar asurin v'chad amar mutarin. One says they're mutar, one says they're asur. Tanya Manda Amar mutarin, and we learned in the Braita supporting the Manda Amar that says those branches would be mutar. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braita, Oved Kochavim Shishifa Oved Kochavim Lesorcho. If an Oved Kochavim cut off some branches for himself, he v'shefaya mutarin. The tree itself becomes mutar even, because now he just nullified his Avodah Zarah. Of course, it goes without saying that the cut off branches are mutar. But if he cut off the branches to beautify the Avodah Zarah, then he asura ushfahea mutarin. The Avodah Zarah stays asur because he didn't nullify it, he just wanted to beautify it. But the shfahea, the cut off branches, are mutar. So you see, this Braita supports the mandama that says the branches would become now mutar. They're no longer considered Avodah Zarah if the owner of the tree cut them off. Yisraeli sheshifa avodat kochavim ben esorka ben soroko hu v'shefea asurim. But that's only for a goy dealing with his own Avodah Zarah. But a yid that dealt with the Avodah Zarah of a goy, everything remains asur, because you cannot nullify the Avodah Zarah of a goy. So Itmar, we learned avodat kochavim shenishtabera. Now, if you have a Avodah Zarah that broke by itself, right? Broke by itself. Rav Amar Sarich lebatel kol kisam v'kisam. Rav said, now that it's broken in pieces, the breakage itself does not nullify the Avodah Zarah. So now you have pieces of Avodah Zarah that each and every single one of them needs to be nullified by the owner, one by themselves, because now they're not attached together. So each piece has to be nullified by itself. Shmuel Amar Avodat Kochavim ena betela ela derech kedelata. Shmuel said Avodat Kochavim does not become batel unless he broke the way it's normal for it. The Gemara says, what? That makes no sense. Adarabba, derech kedelata mi bebatela. If it's normal, the goy is never going to be mebatela, because remember, what was the Shmuel's thing? So, well, the guy is going to say that Avodah Zarah didn't help me, and therefore I'm just going to let go of it. Gemara says, if it's normal to break like this, he's not going to nullify it. It's normal. So says the Gemara, it's exactly the opposite. That's what Shmuel said. Shmuel always holds that every time that he breaks on its own is batil. Because the guy says, hey, this Avodah Zarah couldn't even help itself. It's going to help me. Therefore, every time that he breaks even by itself, it's batil. Unless, says the Gemara, it's derech kederata. Unless it is norm to break like this, then they say, well, it's not nothing. It wasn't a catastrophe. That's how it happens, right? That's how Avodah Zarah's IQ is that of a potato. That's how it works. But nevertheless, that's normal. So therefore, they don't deal with it as a nullification, because they're not going to reject their Avodah Zarah for that. So let us suggest that the machloket is like this. The more savar of din l'shvarim, one of them holds they serve the shvarim. This is Rav. Umor savar en of din l'shvarim, and the other one holds that no, the Avodah Zarah don't serve the shvarim, the broken pieces of Avodah Zarah. The Gemara says no. It's the first white line. The Gemara says no. The kul alma of din l'shvarim. Everyone holds that the broken pieces also, if they have this bigger statue and now a hand fell off, they still would even do that. They serve that too. Here we're talking about a second stage of breakage, that even the broken pieces broke further to crumbles. So it says the Gemara, more savar shivrei shvarim asurin, that Rav holds even shivrei shvarim doesn't make a difference. They still would serve them, so therefore you have to nullify each one of them by itself. More savar, and Shmuel holds shivrei shvarim mutarim. That level already is mutar by itself. Veibayit ema, or I will tell you if you want, the kul alma shivrei shvarim mutarim. Everyone holds that shivrei shvarim are mutar already. That even Rav holds that's mutar. Vehacha ba'avodat kochavim shel chuliyot. Here we're talking about an avodat kochavim that's made out of particles, that you combine them together like pieces of puzzle, like pieces of Legos, right? It's different parts, you put them together, and they are not, you don't need a craftsman to put them together. Even a regular person could put them together, and they could take apart and be put back together. Ubehediot, we talk about the case that even a hediot, even a regular layman, could put them back together. More savar, kevan de hediot yachol ha'achzira lo betela. One holds that because a hediot could put them back together, that doesn't need a uman, then lo betela. Umor savar, en avodat kochavim betela ela derech kedelata. And Shmuel holds that it's only derech kedelata that needs bitul dehainu orche, because it is the way it happens. Halav kedelata he ve'en sricha lebatel. And if it's not derech kedelata, then it doesn't need bitul, because it is batel by itself. When he breaks, the guy is going to say, well, it couldn't save itself, he fell apart, and therefore it doesn't need to be mitbatel. And that's machloket Rav u'Shmuel. This concludes perek of the third perek, and we're going to Bezrat Hashem, perek Kol Slamim, we're going to start perek Dalet.